everybody. Welcome to episode 230 of the Rush Roundtable. Tonight, we're discussing Ghost Rider, track 3 off of Vapor Trails. And I want to mention also, we have our books handy. We have all kinds of good things to discuss about this song. And I want to introduce the panel. I have Alex over here. We have Paul, and we have Paul on again to discuss this tune with everybody. I also want to mention, too, if you enjoy the content, be sure to go to Ko-fi, where you can support us and all of our endeavors here on the channel. And without further ado, I guess we could talk about also below the video. We have some sponsors you can check out as well in the video description. So please go there and lend your support to that as well. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. And without further ado, I guess we'll talk about, as I mentioned before, we have our copies of our books. So I figured that'd be a great place to jump off and sort of discuss the title track as well as the title book of the same title. So within that, I think, Paul, you had some things you want to bring up in regards to this fine book.
Yeah, as far as the name of it, in the book, when Neil is, obviously for those who aren't familiar, when Neil went through the tragedies that he did in 97, 98, he went on his 55,000 mile, which would be 80,000 kilometers, ride through Canada, the United States, Mexico, and down into Belize. And he ended up writing a book about it, Ghost Rider Travels on the Healing Road. And what he did as he was doing so was he was sort of finding himself. There wasn't much of a plan besides get out of where I'm at and go places and see things, not that he ever had that bone in his body, but not being Neil Peart, not being that Rush person, but just going. And whether he was driving away from something, the book actually works on 3 levels. For Rush fans, it's obviously a book written by Neil and his experiences. For travel fans and motorcycle aficionados, he talks at length about what he went through doing all this by motorcycle. And then for those who've gone through any form of loss, it's basically, I won't say a how-to book, but it definitely shows someone who is going through all the stages of grief and how they deal with it. And minor spoiler alert, how they come out of it on the other side, how they find themselves again and find a new way to start going. So where the title came from for Ghost Rider is, rather than corresponding with people, he very much kept to himself, but he would send postcards to his friends and family just so they knew he was okay. And this is from page 104 of Ghost Rider. He was talking about corresponding with Alex Lifeson at one point, and it says, "Now it must be explained that Alex and I shared a particular mode of writing to each other in Moronese. With the pen in my left, wrong hand, I started scrawling, 'I am the Ghost Rider,' spelled EYEMTHUHGOSTRYDUR. Then I stopped, my head jerked back, and I thought, whoa, yeah, I am the Ghost Rider." And thus the idea was born. So
Yeah, that's great, too, because even in the book, there's pictures of the motorcycle just on the road with nobody on it, which, of course, they used during the live footage when they played this song. So it's a great point to bring up. And the idea of the nicknames, they all had nicknames for each other. They have like thousands of nicknames that they would use for each other. So when they got the postcards with the nickname written on them, they knew exactly who it was from, because they were all very worried about him. So that's talked about in the Beyond the Light Stage documentary, I believe. But yeah, the Moronese is fantastic, and I would love to be a fly on the wall to read those things as they came into each other. But thank you for bringing it up. It's a really, really great way to jump into this tune, as we will now. We have the music introduction of this tune. Anybody want to sort of discuss that briefly, how the song sort of kicks in?
There's a bit of a bass intro there. They're kind of, and I don't want to use the terms laid back and bluesy, but I'm going to use the terms laid back and bluesy. I've already used them twice. Mm-hmm. But in that respect, yeah, Geddy's coming in with his nice bass intro in a laid back feel. And Lifeson basically brings in his high melodic notes. It's I'm not going to compare it to Red Barchetta, obviously, but it does. You think of it's another driving song. It's another song that's on the go. So in that case, Red Barchetta, you had those harmonics. It was a nice little quiet intro where he's pulling the car out of the garage. In this case, Neil just went. obviously anyone who read the book knows that, and anyone who paid attention to them in the '90s recognizes that Neil just hopped on the bike and went. But you figure when did he really begin kind of really recanting some of his adventures? I feel like by the time he was in some of the mountain provinces, maybe, because getting out of Ontario wasn't really a problem. So, but that intro is just kind of that, as I say, kind of this laid back intro that's just sort of setting a scene for them to just ramp it up as he climbs those mountains.
And Neil was also very quiet on the drums, just behind, just very it's a very, I don't want to say slow, but it's a calm intro to the song.
Like the note I wrote down was this musically for all three of them is a series of consistencies. In other words, if you're taking a long drive for whatever reason, a lot of it is very consistent. It's just, okay, pulling out, now let's get going. And you've got a long drive ahead of you, whether you know where you're going or not. So starting with Neil's percussion, or starting with Geddy's bass, you've just got that, like you said, that low ride. Then you've got the things you start to notice on the drive, which is Alex's notes being played. And then initially you've just got Neil doing mostly cymbal work and the percussion, but nothing stands out because as things, if it's going to be a long road, you've got a lot to cover. So what you have is reliable, consistent playing. Uniform, I might add, but consistent playing. This isn't a song that's going to have a stark solo. It's not going to have a ton of tempo changes that come out of nowhere. This is a reliable long drive.
Yeah. And the fun thing for me is that of the first three songs in the album, One Little Victory was the slowest song. It comes in with the most attitude because of the 16th notes, but it's like 120s, 134, 130 for Ghost Rider. So the tempos are all pretty much the same. They just show three different, substantially different feels between those first three songs.
Yeah, themselves. Yep, absolutely. I think even lyrically, that's another thing that you just point out, Alex, that each of the lyrics is going to have a different feel to it as well. And speaking of the lyrics, let's jump into verse 1 and discuss that. Pack up all those phantoms, shoulder that invisible load, keep on riding north and west, haunting that wilderness road like a ghost rider. So what shall we say about this? I think it ties in pretty well to what we just talked about.
Getting ready for a long journey, metaphor for life, and a lot on his mind, clearly.
Absolutely.
That's how I saw pack up those phantoms and the invisible load. It's all the emotions and the grief that he's dealing with. Just pack it all up and let's just hit the highway and go.
And you figure, as someone who's not a Canadian citizen, I know that most of the Canadian population is in the South, certainly Southern Ontario and certainly a Vancouver area. So at that point, the wilderness road, you start going through some of those plains provinces, and he's going to get that solitude that he wants.
But he's, it says keep on riding north and west. So if you look at where he was, which is in the Toronto area, you go north and west towards, basically you're going towards Alaska. You go towards the Rockies and head up towards Alaska. And don't quote me, but I think that's where he kind of went south. When
he'll tell us in a few short verses, but you're right.
I should have taken that left turn in Albuquerque kind of deal, right? So
yeah,
but yeah,
and even just that point, he's getting himself ready. He's got the red helmet on. He's putting on the rain gear. He's preparing for this drive. Even though his head is all over the place, he's getting his body ready for this long journey that's ahead of him.
He's not bringing much except all that he can't leave behind as he packs up his emotional baggage.
The necessary items like his Macallan scotch, and he certainly did in the book. Certainly made reference many times over to the rain gear and his basically his road armor, essentially.
Oh, he was prepared. Yeah, don't mistake what I said, please. You're right. He was definitely prepared to do this, but he wasn't bringing a lot of extra stuff. It was the bare necessities and all the emotional stuff he was carrying with him.
Yeah, all the gear all the time. That's one of the rules of motorcycling. So yes, with that, we'll jump right into, there's an interlude. I think even the feel of this first part is very consistent, as Paul mentioned before, very aptly. The interlude is 4 measures. Then we jump into verse 2. So I will read you that verse. We'll discuss it. Carry all those phantoms through bitter wind and stormy skies, from the desert to the mountain, from the lowest low to the highest high, like a ghost rider. What shall we say of this?
Literal and metaphorical, obviously. Lowest lows and the highest highs, because he's
Yep.
You go through the plains out in Alberta and Saskatchewan, Manitoba, where you can see your dog run away for 3 days. It's pretty desert flat. And then you hit the Rocky Mountains where you're going, like I said, it's metaphorically, basically.
that is the most Canadian sentence I've ever heard you utter.
I'm gonna be hanging on to that one for a while.
That's great.
That was awesome.
So this is why you want me on, isn't it? Just a
That's
comic
awesome.
relief. It's all
Among other reasons, yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's
all
great.
right. Sorry.
No, it's
Sorry.
fine. Beautiful.
Sorry. I'll be Canadian. Sorry.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Exactly.
Where's my
Rob.
titties? All right.
But even
let's
just
get back
that
on track.
metaphor, was that? I'm sorry.
Let's get back on track here. Come on.
Okay. All right. So the emotional content too is the metaphor in this as well. Your emotions are going through highs and lows. You're getting further away from all the memories that, of all the events, everything, and you're just moving through, so your emotions go with that.
Well, and think about it, even whether it's calm or it's not calm, through bitter wind and stormy skies, from the desert to the mountain, like I said, lowest low, highest high, that's the full dynamic range there. When things are calm, it's a bitter wind or it's the desert. And if things are intense, it's the stormy skies or you've got this mountain peak. So very melancholy. We've said before, these lyrics are not... This is the most personal he's ever gotten, and by his own admission, I've got an interview snippet I'll read maybe next verse, but
Definitely.
tapping into that. So
Yeah, absolutely. And then we have after this particular verse, we have a bridge. So that's interesting. We could talk about that as well. Do you want to mention anything about that part, Alex, before we jump in lyrically, or maybe I should jump into the lyrics and then we'll talk about it?
Maybe jump into lyrics.
Okay.
See what we got going on with that.
All right, so here we come. Keep on riding north and west, then circle south and east. Show me beauty, but there is no peace for the Ghost Rider. For the Ghost Rider. So we have a different feel musically with this bridge too. Different key, perhaps?
Yep, definitely moving from basically D minor to E minor. So that's and for anyone who might be watching and playing the home game, I actually when we go over these, I was kind of going through the guitar book just to sort of see how the transcriber laid out the song form, basically. Because since anyone who's been watching any of our other episodes, certainly for counterparts and whatnot, recognizes that they've never shied away from messing with standard song form, and that's one reason probably most of us are fans. That it's not just verse chorus, throw a bridge in there somewhere. The idea that they'll have in this case, a verse, then a verse separated by just a 4-measure interlude, bridge, then get to a chorus. Why is this not a pre-chorus? Well, it doesn't really function as a pre-chorus. Just instrumentally, musically, it's partially the key change in that respect. But then again, the chorus will have a key change too that's separate from the bridge. But wait. Let's circle back to the lyrics. I'll shut up now, and I'd like to hand the lyrics off to someone else.
Well, Paul, if you want to handle the geography, he was going north and west, and you had mentioned before we started recording, then circle south and east. So he went all the way. I don't have the book page handy, but we know
he went pretty much as far as you
Canada.
can. He went pretty much as far as you can drive towards the Yukon and Alaska, and then he did a sharp left-hand turn somewhere, and then start to follow the western coast of the continent, right, towards British Columbia and then the western states. And
the whole chapter west to Alaska.
there
You wound up on some ferries and staying in a lot of hotels, it seems, on the water's edge.
And show me beauty, but at this point, there is no peace.
Mhm.
Mm.
He's still dealing with.
No matter how far
Like,
he's gone, there's more to do and more to see.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm
I
sorry,
think,
but 88,000 kilometers, that's a lot of mileage. Or 55,000 miles, like you said it. I did the math earlier when you said it, so it's 88,000 clicks.
yeah, I think even musically, this part too, Neil's playing is a bit more busy, which kind of
Mm.
reflects that sort of travel, and also your mental state of like things are just,
Mhm.
churning and churning.
Well, I mean, at that point, and I can't remember where, much like Paul was just saying, as far as where some of the pages were, you're beginning on your trip. All right, it's something new, even if you have that the I got to get away, I got to get moving, got to get that baby soul rested, and you reach that point where it's sort of, well, it's already become old hat because I'm just on the highway. I mean, it probably was a perfect situation for him, as he wrote in the book, to deal with the winding roads and the weather changes, because certainly at that point it puts your focus on, I need to not die myself on the side of this mountain, so as opposed to ruminating. But at some point, he stopped every night and stayed at a hotel. He didn't camp out on the side of the road. He has, as he said later in the book, he was spending about 6 times his amount of money at that point, and so at some point he's going to ruminate, just not while he's physical.
Yeah. Fair point. Yes. And now, speaking of the chorus, we have a chorus, and it goes like this. Shadows on the road behind, shadows on the road ahead. Nothing can stop you now. Nothing can stop you now. There is a shadow on the road behind. There is a shadow on the road ahead. Nothing can stop you now. Nothing can stop you now. Well, we got some repetition here, so we know Donna's rule. What shall we say about this part?
What a great articulate way of describing distance and time. I mean, you go from the sun is in front of you, shadows on the road behind, shadows on the road ahead means I've gone all day, I've gone all day again, I've gone another all day, I've gone another all day, over and over. You've got time elapsing and going through the same things. And much back to what Alex and Paul just talked about as far as the ride itself goes. Yes, he has to focus on keeping himself alive and working through these different, whether it's issues with the bike or regular maintenance, or there's treacherous road to be handled. You can only do that so many times before your issues will catch up to you, or before you go through your issues. So as someone who I was in 48 states. I'm in the US. I was in 48 states by the time I was 12. My family traveled a lot. As an adult, the minute I got my license, I started driving for fun. And eventually I started driving for therapeutic purposes too. If something was on my mind, with the exception of pacing back and forth, as the true hyperkinetic that I am, I would get out and I'd take long drives. I've taken long drives to meet some of you, or are planning to do so. Long drives for me are fun. They're therapeutic. They're definitely, ways to clear my head. If I've got something big coming up, I'll do that. And to get extremely personal for a minute on an anecdotal thing, my late wife is buried at her hometown, which is 2.5 hours from my home. So I will be the first to say that long drives back and forth while visiting there over the years has allowed me to do a great amount of thinking and a great amount of healing. So does this work for some? Yeah. Well, I'll be the first to say it worked for me, among other things.
And we know Neil wasn't the type to just, oh, I'll take the easiest way on the highway on the freeway. No, he would find the winding roads through mountains and woods and want to explore every little nook and cranny. And this is pre GPS times, really, when you think about it, right? Just grab a road map and map it out.
Yep.
Let's see where I can get to today, right? So
Yes, quite true. And even writing indications on the map itself, planning out, the shun pikes and places you don't want to travel by road, or you're looking for that sort of gravel path to make it even more interesting, or it turns out to be a gravel path. Yes, very, very interesting. So with that discussed, let's talk about verse 3. Sunrise in the mirror lightens that invisible load, riding on a nameless quest, haunting that wilderness road like a ghost rider. What shall we say here?
starting to do the work.
Mm-hmm. Putting in the time for sure.
Time,
And
the
he's-
distance.
Yep.
You know, he's lightening that invisible load that he left with who knows how much time before. Like he's dealing with what he's dealing with. It's slow. It's a slow process, but with every day and every mile and every, he's slowly coming to terms with what he's been through.
I love the nameless quest aspect of it. The idea that it's, there wasn't an official name, an official moniker. It's just basically, I got to get out. And certainly just the whole title came upon him while he was out there. You're out, you're riding, you're thinking. He's still being creative. He's still coming up with that name for himself. He's coming up with, his friend who wound up in jail, as far as sort of coming up with names to send him letters. Yes, for anyone who hasn't read this, it is a good read. But also, as Rob brought up earlier, all the many photos that he would get in the middle of nowhere of his bike, in the middle of just propped up on the center stand, like a ghost is riding his motorcycle many times over, getting those photos, because at some point you have to do something creative. Or if you're a creative person like him, you have to do something creative. If you're in the middle, you're still 100 miles out of Moab or something like that.
And as far as imagery with the lyrics goes, it seems like a good time to bring this up. I found a 2004 interview he did with Philip Wadling for, I believe it was Guitar World, or another magazine, in case I have that wrong, but it was with Philip Wadling. He said, you avoid overtly confessional lyrics? And Neil answers, I'd like to find the universal aspect of a song. A lot of the songs on Vapor Trails are an example of that. They're obviously very personal, but I try to find a way to transcend them. That's what memories are like for everybody. Those vapor trails in the sky, it's not just me, they fade. The nature of memory I explored in a few of those songs. Even Ghost Rider, the song, is about my travels, but I tried to find the universal emotional touchstones that other people could discover in their lives. Maybe people will find their own resonance in a song. I like to weave imagery that has a basis in me so that it's heartfelt, but that is also obscure enough so that the listener can find something within it for them. It's like a wind chime. The wind blows through it and makes it sing.
Yeah, that's great. I mean,
while
just
it
the way the
relates
song-
to his book, these are universal themes that can apply to many different circumstances for people.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, it's even like the way the song starts, that wind chimey thing with the cymbals. That reminds me of the opening of the song, bringing that point up you just mentioned, Paul. Yeah, that's amazing. So let's dive into the next bridge of the song. Just an escape artist racing against the night, a wandering hermit racing toward the light. From the white sands to the canyon lands, to the redwood stands, to the barren lands, to the barren lands. Now we have specific geography being mentioned now. So what shall we say of this?
And certainly the syntax picks up a bit. There's that shift that he has in so many songs from this to this. He always has some transitory, which also is referenced in the word in the song Vapor Trails, sort of this transitory moment or section of the song. In this case, the bridge is twice as long as the first bridge, and all those verses ending with like a ghost rider at this point, ending with to the barren lands. At that point, he's far enough out there that you reach that point of no return, and he's at this point, well, beyond that point of no return. I feel like I'm about to ramble. I'm going to turn this over to someone who has something different to say than what's in my head.
Actually, I'm glad you ended. That was a good spot anyway, because like you said, he's out now. He's past that point of no return. I think that was an excellent point that you made there. Is now he's in the heart of it.
It's almost like he could have hit the West Coast or near Vancouver, and he could have turned to head back home, but he didn't. He just, at this point, he said, "You know what? I'm just going to keep going." And so he talks about, the white sands, canyonlands, redwood stands. It's all like Pacific Northwest kind of geography, right? If I'm not mistaken. I'm not American, so I don't.
Absolutely, that's what it is. Yep.
You're doing great.
Just based on what I saw on TV, right? Yeah. But I'm that's what I'm thinking. Like at that point, he could have easily just said, I've driven quite a bit. I could, maybe it's time to call it a day and head back. But no, just said no. At this point, I'm this far. I might as well just keep going. And well, did he ever keep going?
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, he had some people as points to stopping points, like
Yes.
going to Vancouver, going down to LA, etc. He had places he had visited while on tour to revisit, and that's something that when you know that you have the option, it's sort of, oh, I'm out and about, I'm checking out these sites. I mean, that's something I say in photography classes, is that we're allowed to go back and rephotograph something. You should do it many times over, actually, and that's what he was doing, revisiting this site here and there.
Yeah.
And as he was able to get used to people, or if he felt a longing for home or something that was personal, okay, I'm going to stop and visit this person, or I will go here, then I'm going to get right back on the road to back to work, so to speak. That was his job in healing.
Yeah. Yeah. As you mentioned too, the landscapes and the nature was part of that process that gave him the healing that he needed. Absolutely. Yeah. And with that, we'll jump into the next. I think we did the chorus, did we not? No, the second chorus.
Yep.
So we have a second chorus. We just came off the second bridge. So we have a chorus here. Let's get into it. Sunrise on the road behind, sunset on the road ahead. There's nothing to stop you now. Nothing can stop you now. There's a shadow on the road behind. There's a shadow on the road ahead. Nothing can stop you now. Nothing can stop you now. So this is gives us some insight into where he is mentally. So what shall we say about this?
It's a change. It's now he's starting looking at. I feel he's saying that he's starting to look at things differently, and that even more time has elapsed. I take that both ways. So it's not just in the beginning. It was almost like I've got so much behind me. I've got so much ahead of me. Now it's like I've come a long way. I'm doing a lot right now, or I have done a lot right now. Not saying I'm done, but I've got some time behind me. I've got some distance behind me now.
Yeah.
It's more of it's like a positive spin. It's more positive now as opposed to when he left the trip, when he started the trip. Sunrise on the road behind, and sunset on the road ahead. Like he still keeps going.
Yeah, and he's so far into it at that point that he has to hold both sides. The light, the dark, the positive, the negative. Because like we were saying, many stanzas ago that maybe not many, but it seems like there are a lot. Not that I'm complaining, but the idea that he was so far out there that he's past that this is a novel thing. This is his life. What is my life? My life is sitting on this motorcycle, and now it's all good and bad. I was escaping some bad, but the bad's going to catch up with me because phantoms and ghosts don't really have to pay attention to speed limits. So.
Yep.
But nothing can stop you now.
Yeah, there's nothing to stop you now. Nothing can stop you now. I love that distinction there.
Nice.
Yeah, there's definitely clarity. There's a turning point. You can feel there's a turning happening for sure. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. So after this section, we have a guitar solo, roughly 16 measures. What shall we say about that? I bring you into.
Where's Alex? I got to point to Alex. Where's Alex?
Yeah, point in whatever opposite direction you're thinking.
There we go. That's it.
But it's basically on Zoom we find you have to just be Costanza and point and do the opposite. But yes, this is clearly a good example where for this album so far, Leifson's he's kind of looking to be one of the songwriters. He's and this is certainly marks the final albums of their career where he still has some arpeggios, he'll still play certain riffs and whatnot, but it's bass takes more chords, and guitar might have just more driving 16ths that are kind of not tremolo picked, but kind of. So it's the sort of thing where this is one of those solos that's basically its own interlude. It's basically a section that takes us somewhere. It offers a nice break from the narration. We need those 16 measures to clear the head and just say, oh, yeah, wow, that's a lot to think about. There's going to be more coming up for an outro. There's got to be. So it's, yeah, it's not really, we're not talking solos like in the 70s or even in the 80s. Or even the 90s. It's basically, yeah, it's an interlude solo.
And it's, again, consistent.
90s alternative. Yes, consistent, exactly. A
Like
lot of just consistent eighth notes. Yes.
Part of the trip.
And it's not like right in your face either. Like it's
Right.
more like
Yeah,
blends in with the song. We had this discussion even before we started recording about, is there really a solo early on? I thought it was the interlude, and it kind of went, no, actually it is. It's just the way he ramps it up. It just kind of makes it sound that way, right? So
Yeah.
Yes, definitely a fine example of texturing from Alex, where you can just add in something to complement what Geddy was doing, some counterpoint, and it just gives a nice lift. So it's really, really good.
Yeah.
And then there's an interlude of 4 measures right after that, and then
Kind of a re-intro, the bass.
just nice little bookend, nice little rush sandwich.
Yep.
And then we have the outro. So let's talk about that too. The outro is nothing can stop you now. There's nothing to stop you now. Nothing can stop you now. There is nothing to stop you now. Ghost Rider. Nothing can stop you now. There is nothing to stop you now. So this is a great finite point for this tune. So what can we say about this to close it out?
Like life, it's just going to keep going. What are you going to do with it? Even when the trip itself was finished, okay, the healing travels on the healing road. This journey and this book ended, but it had a new beginning. Journeys don't necessarily end when you hit one ending. It's a cliche for a reason. You've got your new beginning. Now what? 2 words. Now what?
Yeah.
So it's always going to continue. How are you going to do it? How are you going to travel this road?
Fine, fair point. Anybody else want to contribute final thoughts before we wrap it up?
I feel like I would probably just be reiterating what Paul just said.
The one thing I did want to point out that I did notice when I was doing some digging here, on Rush and Rio, this was played live only 40 times, only on the Vapor Trails tour. Like we mentioned last week, set list wise, it was in the second set, third slot, it bounced back and forth with Ceiling Unlimited. But on Rush and Rio, Neil breaks his sticks at the ends of this song. Rush forums have endlessly discussed whether or not this was simply practical or it was symbolic and it meant something. And I wanted to point out that no definitive answer was ever stated, so I'm simply letting you know that conversations were being had about this. I will not extrapolate. If you care to view it as symbolic, some pretty interesting, discussion there.
Break 1 or break 2?
Some say 1, some say 2. I saw 1. So some people have said
it's not easy to break a drum. It's not easy to break a drumstick. So
that's one of the points that's brought up.
To kind of plan it for.
And you hear it if you put the DVD or whatever in, you'll see it and you'll hear it.
I would think it's probably pure coincidence that it broke on the last. But
oh no, they show his hands. So
with the way that Neil used to play the drums like really hard. Could he break a stick if he wanted to? Probably.
Yeah,
you do enough rim shots, you can do damage to it.
Yeah,
that's my prized possession. It's a broken drumstick from Neil, and it's damaged.
It's hard.
It was from the Hold Your Fire tour, but and he plays him like backwards, like the butt end is the other way.
Yeah.
And you see all the rim shots and all the cymbal hits on it. It's kind of cool, but yeah, it's not easy breaking a drumstick, especially oak.
So just throwing that out there.
Yeah, no, that's legit. It's a fair question.
Yeah, fair point. Nice.
And we'll probably never know the answer because, well, here we are.
Only one person can answer it.
That's right. That's right. Well, excellent discussion, guys. On that note, we'll wrap up. And also to let you guys know that if you like this video, this discussion, please feel free to like and subscribe to the channel. And as always, you're more than welcome to support us on Ko-fi. And also check out our merch shop. And again, this description links in the description below. Please visit those, and we really appreciate it. And thank you so much. And we will see you on the next episode of Rush Roundtable. Take care, guys. Thank you.